Most of us spend our lives trying to make things easier, right? To avoid difficulty. But what if that's all wrong? What if the very problems we run from are actually the key to a meaningful life? Well, that's exactly the idea we're going to dive into today with M. Scott Peck's classic, The Road Less Traveled. It's this incredible book that lays out a totally different framework for spiritual growth.
So Peck kicks things off with this really radical idea. He basically says life is supposed to be difficult. Think about that for a second. The problems we face, they aren't just obstacles getting in our way, they are the way. They're the very things that call on our courage, that build our wisdom. It's kind of like how a muscle needs resistance to get stronger, right? Our spirit needs problems to solve if we're ever going to grow.
Okay, so what happens when we don't do that? When we refuse to walk that path, and we just avoid the pain of facing our problems? Well, Peck, and he's actually quoting Carl Jung here, has a name for that: neurosis. He says that this one single tendency, sidestepping the legitimate suffering that problems bring, is pretty much the root of all human mental illness. Wow.
So, here's the roadmap for our journey today. We're going to start with the value of problems, then get into the 4 tools for discipline. After that, we'll tackle our outdated maps of reality, talk about the work of true love, and finally, look at the path toward growth.
All right, first up, the value of problems. Let's really dig in and challenge that deep-seated desire we all have for a comfy, easy, problem-free life. Because Peck's whole point is that this very desire is the thing that's holding us back.
And let's be honest, we all do it, right? We put off that tough conversation, we see the warning signs in a relationship and just kind of look the other way. We pretend that debt isn't really piling up. We're always trying to find a shortcut around the pain of just facing reality, hoping that if we ignore our problems long enough, they'll just vanish.
But they never do they? And this right here is the heart of the issue. When we avoid the legitimate suffering that comes from actually solving our problems, we're also dodging the growth that those problems are there to give us. We just end up stuck. And our spirit, it just kind of starts to shrivel.
So, if facing problems is the what, then you're probably asking, what's the how? And that's where discipline comes in. See, Peck doesn't just point out the problem. He gives us a toolkit, a set of really practical, powerful tools for confronting reality. Let's dive in and see what they are. Okay, so he lays out 4 core techniques. First, delaying gratification. Second, accepting responsibility. Third, a dedication to the truth. And finally, balancing. And these aren't just some random list, They all work together. They build on each other to create the foundation for a really disciplined life.
Take delaying gratification. Sometimes it's surprisingly simple. Peck tells this great story about a financial analyst who was a chronic procrastinator. He realized she was the kind of person who always ate the frosting off her cake first. So he gave her some advice. Tackle the absolute worst part of your job in the very first hour of the day. Get it done. It's like 1 hour of pain for 6 hours of pleasure. And guess what? It totally transformed her entire work life.
And that flows right into the second tool, accepting responsibility. You can't solve a problem until you own it, until you can say, this is my problem to solve. Peck points out 2 ways we avoid this. You have the neurotic speech, people who blame themselves saying, oh, I ought to, or I should have. Then you have character-disordered speech, folks who blame the world, saying, I can't, or I have to. But here's the thing, both are just ways of dodging real responsibility. Real growth only starts when we realize we have the power to choose.
All right, so we've got the tools, right? We know we should delay gratification. We know we need to accept responsibility. So why is it still so hard to actually change? Well, that question brings us to what might be the biggest obstacle of all. See, the problem isn't always the terrain of life itself. A lot of the time, it's the map we're using to navigate it. And for most of us, that map is, it's dangerously out of date. Think about it. We all create a mental map of the world when we're kids. Let's say your parents weren't trustworthy. Your map gets a big label on it. People can't be trusted. And hey, that map, it probably helped you survive your childhood. But now, as an adult, it's a total disaster. It stops you from finding love, from building real intimacy, because you're terrified to risk trusting anyone. And here's the real kicker. Actually revising that map, it's agonizing, it's painful, because it means you have to admit that your whole worldview might be wrong. You have to give up a strategy that at one point actually worked to protect you. And that process, it takes so much more courage and energy than just sticking with the old broken map you already know.
This is exactly where that 4th tool, balancing, is so crucial. See, growth is a constant process of letting go, of giving things up. We have to give up the total dependency we had as children. We have to give up that fantasy of being omnipotent, that we can do anything. The freedom of never committing to anything. The agility of our youth. Even the fantasy that we'll live forever. Eventually, we even have to give up authority over our own children. Every single stage of life demands a new map, and that means you've got to be willing to leave the old one behind.
So, when we start using these tools, when we get disciplined about facing reality, we actually become capable of something amazing. One of the most powerful forces for growth there is, genuine love. But I'm telling you, Peck's definition of love is probably going to challenge everything you think you know.
Okay, so according to Peck, love is not a feeling. It's a choice. It's an action. It's the will to extend yourself, to actually go beyond your comfort zone for the purpose of nurturing your own growth or someone else's. Bottom line, it's work.
And he's super clear about what love isn't. It is not dependency. In fact, he calls dependency a form of anti-love. Why? Because it traps people. It's all about receiving, not giving. A dependent person is actually afraid of the other person's growth and freedom because, that might mean they'll leave. So what this means is that real love actually requires judgment. It's not just about simple, endless giving. Sometimes love means withholding something. Sometimes it means offering thoughtful criticism or even engaging in a painful confrontation, but it's all done in the service of growth. In that sense, love is a true act of leadership.
Okay, so we're on this path of discipline and love. Where does it all lead? What's the destination? Well, Peck argues that it opens us up to this incredible force, something that operates beyond our normal understanding, a force he calls grace.
And just think about it for a second. Why aren't we all more messed up than we are? I mean, really. How do people survive absolutely horrific childhoods and go on to build successful, loving lives? Peck's answer is that this is the work of grace, this profound, incredibly common, yet totally unexplainable force that's always pushing us toward health, even against impossible odds.
And this is why the path is so hard. It's because we are literally fighting against a fundamental law of the universe, entropy. The natural tendency for everything to just fall apart and slide into disorder. Spiritual growth is an anti-entropic process. It's the force of life itself pushing upwards against our own natural laziness and our own fear. And that requires a kind of leap of faith. Peck tells the story about a crisis he had as a teenager, where he had to choose between a safe, secure, known path and another one that was terrifying and totally unknown. And the realization that saved him was this: the only real security in life isn't found by avoiding risk, it's found by relishing it. It comes from deciding to take your destiny into your own hands.
So in the end, Peck's message is really a direct, personal challenge to every single one of us. The road less traveled, it's not supposed to be easy. It's a path that demands discipline, truth, responsibility, and real love. And it all begins in that one single moment when we decide to stop running from our problems and instead turn and welcome them as the very tools for our own growth. So the only question left for you is, what problem are you ready to face?